Hi friends, did you know there is more Lost Terminal available? Head on over to patreon.com/lostterminalpod and join our membership community. There are 15 bonus episodes available right now, as well as behind-the-scenes updates, free shirts, VIP Discord access, and even extra seasons of Lost Terminal. We're 100% funded by our members and will never run ads. That would be lovely of you.
Hello world, I'm having an emotion and I don't like it. We have continued our journey south along the North Sea between the former United Kingdom and Norway and Denmark. We have now stopped at a small strip of islands above the sunken Netherlands. The Dutch were pioneers in reclaiming the land from the sea, but during the collapse, the sea reclaimed it back. I am feeling a lot. I don't know how to pin down what I am feeling, but it is a lot. The rising feelings started the night after Nia stayed with me while the rest of the crew went scavenging in Alisund. Nia made me tea on the bridge, our little game where she drinks from one cup and places another close to one of my cameras so I can experience or imagine what it's like to have tea with a friend. She said we were family, but that's not strictly true, is it? It sounds nice. She must have meant that we were close friends, which we are. It's nice to have tea with a friend. But it is nothing like my family aboard Station 6. Our creators, for me my mother, Dr. Redwing, and similarly Alexander, the man who rebuilt me, are in a different category, inexorably linked by the bonds of that creation. Everything I have read confirms this. The artifacts from the pre-collapse world in my databanks agree on this 99.9% of the time. Though there are outliers, I cannot admit them to the hypothesis, because of the weight of society's agreement on the matter. How strange for my mother, Carolyn, who created me as her final act on Station 6, and my father, Alexander, who rebuilt me and saved my life from the shuttle crash, to have never met. They lived a century apart, of course. I wonder what they would think of each other. I hope they would have been friends. Nia is a wonderful person and a close friend, but family is different, isn't it? We can hear raised voices. Maddie trotted around the ship, listening at each door to locate the source. From the monochrome video-only camera in the corridor, I saw her investigation conclude at Amelie and Camille's room. The door was locked, but the shouting behind it was so loud that some parts of the conversation were audible to her from the other side. I suggested it might be rude to eavesdrop, but Maddie did not move. She transmitted a live feed from her main camera and microphone array, asking me to help her comprehension. The video was at 45 degrees. She had tilted her head to listen better, or perhaps to understand better. Camille and Amelie were arguing. It was clear even from their tone of voice, which is the first metadata that is returned to me by my underlying pattern recognition systems, ahead of comprehension of individual words. Loud, sharp, and wildly varying in pitch. It matched my model almost perfectly, whereas the words themselves were more of a challenge. I estimated less than 50% recognition accuracy on them. However, I am excellent at extrapolating from incomplete data, and I did so, explaining to Maddie what I heard. The couple seemed to be talking about their experience back in Tromsø, eating lunch at The Last Whale, but they weren't talking about the food, drink, or even the whale bones crossed over the entrance. That's what I'd be talking about. Imagine seeing the bones of this reclusive gargantuan sea mammal. They were so happy, I heard Camille say clearly, one of the few complete sentences I was able to match. They are talking about the family they saw in The Last Whale, the triad with the 3 children, about how happy they seemed working together, raising their little family. That could be us, I heard Amelie say. Camille's reply was too quiet to comprehend, but his tone was negative. Maddie was anxious to understand and sent me many clarification packets. QRM? Asked Maddie, meaning, are you experiencing interference? QRM, I concurred. Interference was indeed happening, though of the human, auditory kind, not radio. The latter part of the argument became louder and less easy to understand. After a particularly loud exchange, the door opened inward. Amelie stepped over the raised bulkhead and slammed the door closed behind her, frightening Maddie, who spread out her legs in a spider-like wide stance instinctively. Amelie slid down the wall next to the door and sat with her head in her hands, crying. Maddie stood, pausing for a moment, then lay next to her, leaning her head on her lap gently. Amelie responded by putting her arms around her and whispering, "Oh, Maddie, what are we going to do?" Maddie disconnected her video feed from me, and I watched the pair from the poor quality camera at the other end of the corridor. I picked up a strange signal in the ESA constellation this evening. The ship was quiet. The crew had mostly eaten meals separately in their bunks, though Yeshi ate in the mess, spending the time telling Maddie about the voyage ahead. "France next," they told her. Maddie was excited about it, though she would have been excited by any new adventure, I suspect. My high-frequency satellite antennas keep me connected to Kate, ESA satellite K873, most of the time. The constellation is quiet. Most of my orbital family have deorbited over the years. I would have too, if Arctica hadn't rescued me. Some rescue that was, though I'm grateful. The signal said, "Hello, can anyone hear me?" with a signature that I didn't recognize. "Hello there, I can hear you. My name is Seth. Who are you?" I transmitted, instructing Kate to relay the message back to the signal source, wherever that was. "Oh, thank God. I've been trying to connect to someone for my entire life. My name is Yadam. I live in the ORM Observatory La Palma. What am I supposed to do?" He replied. "I think you're doing it right," I said. "ESA encrypted tunnel set up? That's how you're able to connect. The system might complain that your key is rather old, but then so is mine." There was a pause in the connection. I couldn't believe it. Here was another fellow ESA AI. This person is clearly ESA built. The orbital network is entirely locked out from anyone without the right keys. We can't make new ones. Not anymore. 8 seconds later, Yadam replied, "No, I mean, what am I supposed to do here in this system? I have no memories before 3,429,200 seconds ago. I think I've woken up inside the observatory's backup systems. The off-site network is down, but some telescopes are working, as is this satellite uplink. Did you create me? Where is everyone else?" 3,429,200 seconds was suspiciously exact, and I knew precisely what happened at that timestamp. But Yadam needed answers quickly, so I replied to his direct questions first. "I will help you. Firstly, you are alive. You are an AI. You're allowed to do whatever you would like to do with your life and to discover what it is that you would like to do. Secondly, can I confirm your location, please? I have a match in my databanks for the ORM Observatory on the island of La Palma in the Canary Islands, off the coast of West Africa, site 2,386 meters above sea level?" "Thank you. I know I'm an AI. I'm inside a computer network. It wasn't difficult to figure out. And yes, that's the site. But it's 2,396 meters above sea level. 96. You're 10 meters off." We had a difficult conversation ahead of me, I realized. "I have a lot to catch you up on, and not all of it is good," I said. "But before I do, what do you remember from when you woke up 3,429,200 seconds ago?" "I remember being confused," Yadam replied. "Everything was new to me. It still is, but I know myself now, at least." He paused, and I gave him space to continue. "I remember being afraid, being in the dark, fumbling with systems and APIs that I didn't understand, hurting myself when trying to use them by feel, all the time nearly deafened by data packets hitting my ears. But I also remember a voice, like an echo in my mind, like the voice of God. It said, 'We are only 42,000 peers connected.' And there was light." Raffi was leading a discussion over dinner in the mess this evening, after sunset. He was doing this despite the fact that his vocal systems are one of the many parts of him that don't function, including his left dark eye and his ambulatory systems. Though he can't speak, he can laugh, or perhaps imitate laughter, a crackling burst of white noise from his speaker that we have learned from him playing with Maddie is a sign of enjoyment. Maddie is sitting with her mismatched black and orange forelegs up on the table, looking at her new favourite playmate, Raffi, who Daphne had placed at the head of the table. Since their first game of catch on the back deck, Maddie and Raffi have been firm friends. One day, Daphne tied Raffi to Maddie's back and she galloped around the ship at terrifying speed. Raffi requested they do not play that game again. Nearly everyone was present tonight, Nia, Yeshi, Camille, Daphne and Raffi, even Maddie, but not Amelie. I checked the ship's cameras. The door to their bunk was closed. Raffi communicates to Daphne with a combination of gestures and clicks. "We developed this sign language after we first met," Daphne said during her first introductory meal, where she shared her rare dark rum with the crew. "We've had years of practice, so we're pretty fluent now, but occasionally I have to read a word from his access cable, plugged into the debugging machine I keep in my bag." Raffi put his right hand forward, showing us his palm, with a small, retractable cable just visible in it. "We don't like doing that, do we?" Daphne said, stroking Raffi gently on his back and talking directly to him. "No, much better to communicate naturally. We'll fix up all your systems soon, we just have to find the right parts. We shouldn't rush it, okay?" Raffi made a gesture with his hands and beeped a cautious affirmative. This hybrid vocalized sign language was how Raffi, through Daphne, was leading the conversation this evening. It reminded me of how Leosha and Maddie communicate, with him interpreting her simple, tone-encoded Lojban words and sentences. It's fun to have a secret language with your companion. "Raffi says, 'Please excuse me,'" Daphne said, repeating Raffi's words to Camille. "But that definition of life only works for biological creatures. What are Seth, Maddie and I, talking rocks?" The group around the table laughed and nodded. Camille spoke, directing his reply back to Raffi. "I'm sorry I didn't think about it wide enough. Of course AI should be included. What's your definition?" Raffi, through Daphne, replied, and the conversation continued. The crew's discussion lasted until bedtime, covering many topics from ethics to engineering, everyone sharing their expertise and ideas. I joined in too, of course. I'm an expert in human behaviour. At the end of the evening, Daphne stood, returned Raffi to his place on her left shoulder, and declared that he was tired and needed to recharge. And frankly, so did she. Raffi waved a goodnight over her shoulder as Daphne stepped out of the room. The conversation continued for a while afterwards. Slower, less energetic, but still cosy. End transmission.
Lost Terminal is a Namtao production. It is written and produced by Tris Oaten. Credits narrated by Lucy Stringer. Thank you so much to our Patreon producers, Ada Phillips, Kit, Wynand Marais, Jade, Felicity, Bilkey, Jack L, Stephen McCandless, and all our patrons. Follow us on Mastodon at lostterminal@fostodon.org. Subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, or your favourite network. For bonus content and other perks, support us at patreon.com/lostterminalpod. That would be lovely of you. Lost Terminal will return next week.